Meanwhile, U.S. military data stolen by a hacker named Alf during a months-long breach of an Australian military subcontractor's computer network. The attack, which may have originated in China, targeted data related to sophisticated U.S. and Australian weapons system. This is the third breach of U.S. military information announced in the last week. Joining me now, retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, now a senior fellow at the London Center for Policy Research.
Hey, David.
How are you doing, Colonel?
Very good, thank you.
We have more mounting evidence that a lot of the stuff that is subcontracted to private firms, dealing with intel matters of military allies of ours, whether it's Australia or South Korea, has been infiltrated itself. That is, the Pentagon or the other military will buy these systems, this software program, to protect their information. And just the opposite happens. It infects their system with malware. That's happening here in the Pentagon as well, is it not?
Oh, yeah. The first instance of this, David, actually, interestingly, happened in the late 90s with something called Checkpoint software, Firewall One, which was actually purchased by the U.S. Air Force to protect their so-called unclassified systems. It was, look, I'll just be blunt, it was designed by the Israelis, and it had tons of back doors in it. So I would have thought that we would have learned our lesson very early in the early years of cyber operations, but we clearly haven't.
So is there no way to contain it, Colonel?
Oh, absolutely, but you have to be smarter than the average bear. There's reasons some of the operations I ran, cyber operations, were only run using government personnel. That is to say that you had government employees, either GS or some designation of civilian or military, and you do things to protect what you do. I mean, look, David, the CIA's had the same problem. During the time that the current CIA director's been there, Mike Pompeo, they've had compromises of their technology because they give it to contractors. Contractors seems to be the weak link here, and it clearly what you described regarding the South Korean breach happened because people were relying on people who supposedly had security clearances, probably had some level of clearance, but they were clearly designated or targeted by the North Koreans or other bad guys to essentially be a Trojan horse to get into these larger systems.
I can only imagine that the whole situation has gotten a lot worse because of what we went through with the Obama administration, where we had all kinds of security secrets handled much too flippantly by our Secretary of State, among others. And of course, the overall strategy of how to deal with the world epitomized by the Iranian deal.
Yeah. Look, I talked to some of the senior folks involved in the Hillary Clinton investigation, and they told me that the things that they saw that were compromised literally, quote unquote, set their hair on fire. And these are people with high clearances. So clearly that's sort of basically beyond malicious incompetence. You're talking about here a planned event that has been very well, very carefully orchestrated. And let me remind you, David, the Iranians do this. The North Koreans have plenty of time, plenty of capability to do this.
And I'm sure they share secrets. I'm sure they share tips about how to do it better. By the way, I got to say, General Kelly, who gave an unbelievably successful, I think, press conference today, in my opinion, he spoke about how they had been, even though he was very kind to the previous administration, he said, look, I'm not blaming anybody, but I got to say, we were left with a hell of a plate to deal with here. And part of it, of course, what he was talking about was security.
Right. And clearly, not only have we seen from the compromises, purposeful compromises to the media by what I believe to be former members of Obama's staff, I believe people in the intelligence community have leaked. They've got real material weaknesses within the system. And they've got to look at everything. Look, David, I once told a senior administration official going into the Trump administration, they should treat the entire Obama administration like a crime scene. And I wasn't joking. I mean, you've got to look everywhere for both malignant, intentional things which have been broken and things which are just not working.
It's not good. You can't imagine empowering one of our enemies, Iran, a country that prays for our destruction as a nation, empowering them with billions of. I mean, it's crazy. Historians will look at this as nuts.